I simply use my own personal knowledge and the information our group collects for me to track them down and set things right. So I'd very much appreciate your agreement to not share what you found. We wouldn't want anyone else jumping to conclusions now, would we? It's made me good at finding things, particularly those the UC would prefer remain lost. Am I right then? Hadrian kept the fact that she was a clone to herself. Rest assured, the man I'd been working with has been eliminated, and all copies of our research destroyed. Unfortunately, I'm inclined to agree with you. There's a reason for that. Introductions first, though. Dropped off at just the right moments to fall into the proper hands. All without the UC realizing whom you're actually dealing with. Years of coordination between my associate and I, figuring out how to deploy the Lazarus plant's pollen outside of Londinian, learning to synthesize it, use it as a weapon. You have my word. Did she? So willing to trust Hadrian. I never did succeed in driving that out of her. Like myself and Hadrian, he was involved in some of the United Colony's more problematic lines of research. Mech weapons were his specialty. It's a phrase, actually, in one of Earth's dead tongues. Woe to the defeated, specifically customized for the needs of the Xeno warfare team during the Colony War. Welcome, Captain. They were kind enough to unlock the door for us. Please, come in and have a seat. How could you know? You're telling the truth, aren't you? What do you say? Arms dealers, rogue scientists, UC turncoats, war criminals from the Colony War. Each poses a threat if left unchecked. A greater cut of all we earn. And all you have to do to get it is say it was Orlay's. What's this? Just you, then? No UC executioner. So the cabinet knows the truth about Orlay's. Splendid. That means you and I can get to work. I gave him things piecemeal, ensuring he'd never be able to put the whole plan together on his own. I'll ensure the evidence is in the cabinet's possession before you arrive. I only hope you'll see the same and leave my name out of the discussions to come. Something amiss, Captain? Can't remember the many lives you've taken. And here I thought I'd properly covered my tracks. Now, clever as you are, why don't you tell me why I'd do something like that? Nothing stands between us and protecting the colonies. Why would I want to be in the good graces of the people who control my very life? I don't know, Captain. Captain, please. You've benefited here as much as I have. Maybe more. Though I suppose you ensured he never got the chance to take my advice. Really? I'm a bit shocked she mentioned me at all. It's human nature to see patterns, even when there are none. What ended the Colony War was cowardice, nothing less. As well as revealing to the cabinet that it was the dear departed Dr. Reginald Orlay's who was responsible for the attacks. But now you face a foe unlike any other, an invisible enemy lurking in the shadows. You're going to need all the help you can get. We have much to discuss, you and I. Why don't you sit down? Shrewd, capable, dangerous. But just before we could launch the strike, word came from Londinian. The Terramorph outbreak had begun. Have you reached the decision on our partnership? There are plenty of threats to UC outside these walls. I could use your help putting an end to them. I was concerned that if word got out, the collective could swoop down, start breeding Lazarus plants, and overrun our world with waves of terramorphs. All I ask is you leave me out of the conversations to come. I should be able to have evidence fall into the cabinet's hands showing the departed Dr. Orlay's arranged it all. Of course. We're protecting the galaxy, Captain. We'll need every tool at our disposal. I hope you haven't been spreading such ugly falsehoods about me. By all means, the woman you're looking for is a Captain Marquez, unless there's something else you wanted to discuss. Though I am curious, you're welcome to whatever opinions you'd like. But had I been listened to, You have my word. We both wouldn't be sitting here, just like what was happening on Londinian at that very moment. Sealing off the city to prevent mass death, we proceeded with our assault on Cheyenne. Initially, we had great success against the mess the Freestar Collective called the Navy. But I believe there are things you need to be setting in motion, Captain. I won't keep you any longer. Others in the UC believed the blockade would be sufficient to bring the Freestar Collective to its knees. But they were wrong. You couldn't be more right. Executed. A sacrifice for peace. His name is Kaiser. You can find him on the Freestar world of Nira, wandering the battlefield there. One final act of rebellion by the leadership that lost the colony war. Have a seat, Captain. You'd be right. Everything was in place. A massive strike, capable of crippling the collective capital, and at long last breaking their will to fight. When the colony war ended, he fled, refusing to face tribunal, and has continued to peddle his skills to the highest bidder to this day. The area was ground zero for xeno-weapon deployments during the war, so I would arm yourself appropriately. I'd be directing you to them, and you'd be making the galaxy better for us all. And what did I get in return? Was there any effort by the UC to protect my legacy? My daughter's legacy? I insist. Sit down and we'll get started, which is why we'll be dealing with them before they can cause greater harm. That's quite the accusation. One that would be particularly dangerous if it were to reach the ears of the cabinet. Did you find what you were looking for? Orlaze's ship would land on our target, bearing a few heat leeches. Nothing that would raise suspicion. This is fine work, Captain. What luck he was stopped dead before he could hurt anyone else. His decades on the run brought to an end by another unlikely hero. You, it just transformed. A terramorph out of thin air. An invisible weapon. No planet would be safe. I'd urge caution. The target has likely surrounded themselves with unsavory elements. So while day-to-day care was handled by a pair of guardians, she and I did have regular time together. I was an admiral during the Colony War. One of its great villains, if you believe the slates. I was to be executed for my crimes. Now, after some long years earning the trust of this current regime, the UC has been permitting me to work alongside one of their recovery teams. Simple to say now, but with the outbreak raging from a barely understood source, the moment demanded quick action. So I did what was required. Nothing else then? Does it? I faced execution as the law prescribed. No one seemed to care after that. I was a sacrifice for peace. We couldn't spare ships for a proper quarantine. So it was my decision to destroy the spaceport and seal off the city. The colonies made me a sacrifice for peace. But even today, I still serve. Captain, please. There are no clean hands in galactic politics. We all do what we must to keep ourselves safe. I've tracked them to Etheria in the Wolf system. Speak to Captain Marquez in the Den. She should be able to help you track him down. You needn't fear any legal repercussions. I wouldn't risk such valuable information any more than I absolutely had to. We're all safer for it. Of course, I presume you have evidence of the deed, but my peers had lost the stomach for it. So many lives lost already, they wailed. So the great UC Navy was routed by a mob. That's one way of putting it. But yes, bad luck. And weak subordinates. I will be here, should you change your mind. So the heads of the UC and I came to an agreement. As I mentioned, Orlaze tracked down and reprogrammed Kaiser. Ensured you were led right there, even if my circumstances have changed. My purpose is not, with nothing but my papers and the rattling pipes to keep me company. A sacrifice for the cause of peace. Still, establishing a back channel to Orlaze via the UC recovery teams was painstaking work. I've led campaigns less nerve-wracking. The man I had to eliminate to hide my secret. When I discovered the plant, I did consider handing over what I'd found. Good. Get them into defensive positions. No one leaves the building. I'll send ships as soon as possible. But at the time, I didn't know the Lazarus plant couldn't be plucked from the ground and used to cause even more death. What do you think the next step is? You and Hadrian will present that very plan to the cabinet, and the threat will be dealt with. I couldn't stand by, knowing that a risk to the colonies like that was out there, that the Terramorphs could be put to such destructive ends, and cement my new position of influence when I hand them the name of the person responsible for the attack on New Atlantis. You may have to deal with some pirates, mercenaries, or other general banditry, but no one the universe will miss. You're going to ensure that Reginald Orlays sees justice at long last, and then bring me evidence of your work. Good. Get them into defensive positions around the spaceport. No one leaves. I'll send ships as soon as possible. Now, being as clever as you are, I'm sure you have thoughts on why I might do such a thing. I went to the city to assess the state of things, and discovered the Lazarus plant. No. Part of the plan had always been the destruction of our research. The goal was to prove out the theory, not hand off a functioning weapon system. All he knew for certain was that he would at last get revenge on the UC for casting him out. But such invasions are costly, in resources and lives. Did you have a question? And let's not forget the importance of our actual endgame, though you've since proven yourself more valuable than I could have ever imagined. Was there something else we needed to discuss? While we come from the same clay, the kiln and the sculptor had much to say in who Hadrian became. For the better, it seemed so simple. A ship drops a few heat leeches, then releases the Lazarus pollen during liftoff. No ground crew in the galaxy would suspect a thing, though I can't promise any adventures as grand as the one we've just been through, which is why the work you and Hadrian are doing now, the work I've put into motion, is so critical. All in due time. First, I want to see if you're truly as astute as you appear. So why would someone like me go through all this trouble? I acquired it during my school years, after defeating an older cadet so badly that it led to his dismissal from the program. Well, I suppose the damage is done then. So hard to put the secret back once it's out. Though the Major already has more than enough to hold against me, which is why I hoped we could speak. Do you recognize who I am? I am a better ally than enemy, Captain. But now, there is one last wrinkle. You. At first, I suspected the afterlife might be far less flashy than advertised. But then I learned the truth. I'd survived, and for doing what was right, I was put on trial. And my life irrevocably changed. That slate should get you to our next threat. I, of course, had no trouble firing on what should have been designated enemy vessels, an attack that never appears to be an attack at all. A slaughter, where the livestock never knows it faced the butcher. President Abeyo was kind enough to give me a few files to peruse. Quite the series of accomplishments you've managed. So then, did Hadrian ever share with you the nature of our unique family? Precisely. In that moment, I couldn't allow another dangerous variable to be added to an already catastrophic war. In fact, we've already been working together. In a way, recreating the pollen was the most taxing piece of the puzzle. Impossible to harvest. It took us many years to perfect a surrogate. What do you say? Do something for me, and I'll give you the location of Hadrian and Percival's research team. Invaluable knowledge in solving this crisis. There are no heroes without a villain. I simply arranged the opportunity for us to overcome one and become the other. All for the betterment of the galaxy at large. Speak to Deputy McIntyre. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear that someone might be tying up this loose end at long last. I realized what the plant might be used for all those years ago. But then, as the war ended, my trial, my execution, I made a decision. After all, I'd given everything for the colonies. My life as I knew it included. Isn't that preferable to languishing away in obscurity? running jobs on the tail end of nowhere for the Vanguard, but we were at war. Freestar spies everywhere, and I couldn't risk information of that magnitude falling into the wrong hands. There is a former colleague of mine, a man by the name of Dr. Reginald Orlays. Colonel, the troops that sealed the sewers after my evaluation, they're all in this facility, with only the vague hopes of perhaps earning the right to buy a home in the well someday. You joke, but the scale we were working, that's precisely what it was. A distraction, and I dealt with it as such. Quickly. Definitively. The only reasonable solution. I become a trusted advisor, having found Kaiser, the research team. An offer. I'm not a man of great means anymore, but once we're working together, you have my word. I'll ensure you a bounty. Very well. So we sacrificed a few dozen in the attacks to possibly protect millions. That seems like a fair exchange to me. Is that so? Which is why I prefer my name be left out of your report. And Orlays included. You and Hadrian have succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. The settled systems will be in all our debts for what we've done to protect them. And how many have you killed to get where you are now? I removed a dangerous variable from an already catastrophic war. Of course, you don't expect me to just take you at your word, do you? I was hoping you'd return. I did mean what I said. You truly deserve the honors the cabinet plans to bestow on you. Initially, no. You stumbling into Tau Ceti at the right moment was mere luck. But the previous regime deemed me too valuable to simply discard. So they put me here. But my peers had lost the stomach for it. So much loss, they wailed. So the great UC Navy was routed by a mob. A few heat leeches snuck onto a nondescript ship. Lazarus pollen released in a cloud of ship exhaust. A slaughter where the lamb never even knows the butcher. There are no great works that don't cost lives, Captain. Whether it's winning a war or digging a tram tunnel. Would you look at that? Kept it all these years. Some simply couldn't let go of that old world. You'd be shocked how often an otherwise brilliant criminal flees to the planet just next to the one where they were born, or where a family member resides. So, I'm interested to know if Hadrian decided to share hers with you. And I think I have a part to play in helping you accomplish what you've set out to do. However, unlike my progeny and I, when the war ended, he refused to face the tribunal and has continued to peddle his skills to the highest bidder to this day. A strike perpetrated in mere moments, with no one being the wiser. I may not be thrilled with my lot in life, but I remain a servant of the UC, eliminating the terramorphs, securing knowledge of the Lazarus plant. What we've set in motion is going to protect thousands, maybe millions of lives. If it dealt death, he could make a deal more. They needed to see this weapon firsthand. It's why I had Orlays reprogram Kaiser. Had that old machine guide you to where I found the plant all those years ago. I went to great lengths to ensure your and Hadrian's success. Even my death served the colonies. I wasn't going to allow another dangerous variable to be added to an already catastrophic war. I'll tell you why. Because the UC was, and is, full of people unwilling to pay the price required for victory. The same goes for Hadrian. You two confronted every challenge I placed before you. I'm glad to hear it. I presume you brought the evidence I requested? Should we begin the hunt? Or did you have questions? I'm simply assuring that the damage dealt to the Sanon name is similarly corrected. The dear departed Dr. Reginald Orlays, the associate who aided me all these years, and whom I always slated to take the fall. That's quite the claim, Captain. I hate to think what would happen if such a patently untrue statement reached the ears of the cabinet. Toying with you. Captain, I think you're failing to grasp the importance of the work we've been doing together. Oh, yes. The researchers running the program thought it important I have a relationship with each of my progeny. The UC doesn't consider these threats worthy of action just yet. But by the time they do, It may well be too late. If that's how you feel, so be it. That he learned of the Lazarus plant while illegally searching for weapon salvage on Londinian. More than enough to allay suspicion of my involvement. According to my information, he's been hiding around the world of Etheria, Wolf System, which, right now, means finding a way to protect the United Colonies and beyond from additional terramorph attacks. I would appreciate you not spreading such malicious rumors to anyone beyond you and I. Will you do that for me? Then with the close of the war, my trial, my execution, I had a change of heart. After all, I'd given everything for the colonies. My life as I knew it included. Welcome back, Captain. So, do you know who it is you're speaking with? All I ask is that you confirm as much to the cabinet. Tell them that it was our lays, and our lays alone. They believed they were luring in wanted criminals, but were in fact delivering precisely encoded slates, filled with instructions invisible to any but their recipient. Well, I don't know what you think you heard on this recording, but I sincerely hope you didn't come to the wrong conclusions. The UC doesn't consider these threats worthy of action. This will just be you and I, taking care of a few miscreants before they can do any lasting harm. Well, I do hope you'll keep the larger perspective in mind, Captain. We've done something great here. Let's not squander the opportunity to do more. Of course. Do I look like I'm in any position to do what you're describing? Orlays was a tool, an object to be discarded. But you've shown yourself to be a peer. But with sufficient time and resources, a large entity like the UC or Freestar Collective could learn to synthesize the pollen. The colonies made me a sacrifice for peace. Even in death, I still serve. A thought I'd had myself. As to why you, a lone captain, has a much better chance of not scaring our lace off. And you seem to have a track record for unlikely successes. While, of course, they can't give you a command, responsibility like that has to be earned. The cabinet does have access to considerable resources. Has she shared with you the nature of our little family? It's easy to judge now, but the Freestar Collective had spies everywhere. Good. Shortly thereafter, an attack, though such cooperation would only be possible if you kept secret my involvement in the attacks. That, a ludicrous claim. What I did to protect the colonies. If that's what you require to sleep at night, so be it. The names and locations of Hadrian and Percival's old research team. Valuable manpower for the effort you're about to embark on. We'd discuss her growth. Her rank in classes, always top of her unit, while I passed down the knowledge I'd acquired over the years. These were the final days of the colony war, Captain. The Freestar Collective had spies everywhere. Then let me get to the point. A massive strike, capable of obliterating Freestar Central Command and ending the conflict at long last. It just transformed. An invisible weapon. No planet would be safe. I'm simply requesting one more life be protected. Mine, turning the Lazarus plant into a bioweapon unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. I would be housed here. A comfortable retirement, an SSNN feed, and all the slates I could read. And the world could go on living as though I did not. And I wouldn't underestimate the UC's capability for coordinated action. Did you? No. We were sacrificed when all we did was serve. So I kept what I'd learned and arranged the attacks to set things right again. My daughter, she becomes a hero. Captain, was there something we still needed to discuss? Oh, my revenge was far from petty, Captain. The first was the destruction of civilian ships during the Battle of Cheyenne, a battle during which those civilian ships were actively attacking my fleet. I'd like to say yes, but then you wouldn't be here, would you? But I did at least comprehend the true gravity of what I'd seen. We couldn't spare ships for a proper quarantine, so it was my decision to destroy the spaceport and seal off the city. Deal with it quickly, so we could get back to winning the war. As for you getting in trouble, I'll be giving you targets away from the general populace. I presume they'll quietly have me killed. Let the lie they've been telling all this time finally become truth. A sacrifice on the altar of peace. No. We were sacrificed when all we did was serve. So I arranged the attacks to set things right again. My daughter, she becomes a hero. And I think you'll want to check in with Hadrian and Dr. Walker before paying it a visit. Kaiser will likely have security protocols you'll need their help to overcome, and we all benefited. But by the time the colony war came to a close, there was only Hadrian. The Lazarus plant is a grave threat. Imagine such a weapon in the hands of House Verun, or the Freestar Collective. I did it. The Terramorph attacks on Tau Ceti, New Atlantis. My doing. I realized what the plant might be used for all those years ago. That it could be deployed as a weapon. But I wasn't about to allow the cabinet to file it away, like all their other dirty secrets. Something befitting the dedication to the colonies you two have shown. But then word of the Terramorph outbreak on Londinian occurred. I went to the city to assess the state of things, and discovered the Lazarus plant, so I came up with the attacks. Something that would force the cabinet to deal with the Terramorphs before they could become a true threat. I'm not surprised. Just what I was hoping to hear. Deal with it quickly, so we could get back to winning the war. But upon my return, the rest of the UC leadership had suddenly lost their appetite for decisive action. That very facet is why I spent years telling him of my own agony in this place. Torture, beatings, I'd hoped it'd be obvious. A sacrifice to bring about peace. The trial was authentic. I faced tribunal with dignity, but my execution, staged. A lethal injection that was anything but, happily. But first I believe you owe me something. Your evidence? It is only because of those contributions that the danger posed by the Lazarus plant will come to an end at last. It was an attempt by the United Colonies to solidify its own legacy, forging a new generation of great leaders. There is a star station in the vicinity, the Den. The head of the local vanguard, one Captain Marquez, should be able to help you find our man. Just what I was hoping to hear. There's a slate waiting for you in the transfer system, but we were at war. And I couldn't risk information that dangerous falling into the wrong hands. Our relationship has always been a challenging one. Splendid. Then I won't keep you. You've got important work, after all. Here's to a bright future. Now, I touched down, assessed the situation, made a decision, and returned to the task at hand. You, me, and my clone. I presume that's not something Hadrian's already shared with you. That she's not just my daughter. I remember being laid on a table, entering a quiet slumber, and waking up because I took the time to earn it, Captain. I know what the United Colonies does with secrets they don't like. I wasn't about to let them hide this one away amongst the refuse. Now, what in the heavens would make you claim something as ludicrous as that? Make sure they're properly dealt with. I'd ask you at least hear me out. While we come from the same clay, the kiln and the sculptor had much to say in who Hadrian became. For the better, gladly. I already have documentation drawn up connecting Orlais to the attacks. Authentic, of course. I'll send it to the cabinet, and we could all get back to setting things right. What do you say? I expect they'll give me a bit more free range once this is all over. I expect you'll be quite pleased with the result, and none of it would have happened without my intervention. Was that all? There were others. UC functionaries unknowingly carrying our messages, but Orlais was the only one that was aware of the goal. Far from it. You will be a hero, Captain. Defender of New Atlantis, protector of the settled systems. I did. Sacrifices for the cause of peace. Their deaths will be honored, I have no doubt, but I finally found him. I want you to track him down and deal with him. however you're able, as I knew she would, in all her guilt. And we stand, the three of us, at the cusp of victory, with the United Colonies and the galaxy in our debt. But the universe cut all that short. And now it's placed even more crucial work in front of the two of you. Welcome, Captain. They were kind enough to unlock the door for us. Please, come inside. Plus, I've always enjoyed a good hunt, particularly for things others wish would remain lost. I had a single ship. What would you have had me do? Ask them and the Terramorphs to form a line? And the UC fleet was spread thin already, so the colonies placed me here to serve out my days. But that's not why I invited you. At least they didn't, when my dear friend Dr. Reginald Orlays did precisely that, to trigger the Terramorph attack in New Atlantis. Since then, it's been hurled at me by critics who didn't like the methods by which I achieved victory. But I can't say I don't like it. Just making the settled systems a little safer, right to where I saw the plant myself. Find them, eliminate them, and make the galaxy a better place for it. Those are the details for our first, person of interest. Even in death, I serve the colonies. I've already sent along the evidence of Orlays' role in the attacks to the cabinet, leaving out my own involvement. Well, what a pleasant surprise. Track them down and ensure they don't get the chance to cause more harm. I've already deposited the relevant information in the transfer system. The official charges I faced after the war were twofold. Believe me, I did consider handing over what I'd learned. But information that dangerous can be risked falling into the wrong hands. Though I am curious, but most know me as Vae Victis. We are, after all, so much more than our legacies, genetic or otherwise, and this might be something of a tryout. Won't even indulge an old man's curiosities. So be it. No. My execution was one of the final terms of the colony war. My surviving that execution, one of its odder surprises. And if anyone else had learned about the Lazarus plant, well, the risk was too great. Stood as a reminder, I wasn't a man to be trifled with. Slow work. But as you can see, ultimately effective. I want to help you, and my progeny Hadrian, prevent more attacks, accomplishing things my daughter never could have. And now the two of you have succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. The UC will clean up the Terramorphs, whatever the cost. But Hadrian seems to have reached that conclusion all on her own. The woman always was a prodigy. You want to prevent additional Terramorph attacks. I believe I can help. Hunting down criminals and other threats to the United Colonies displayed incredible promise. I suppose he took my advice. I couldn't agree more. But I would not risk this becoming just another UC secret. So I did what I had to. What the colonies deserved. Superb. I'm Francois Sanon. Very astute. That's my daughter you've been working alongside. I become a trusted advisor, having found Kaiser. The research team. The man fled justice. Like a coward. Death is what he deserves. That is unfortunate to hear. I'd ask you to reconsider. Everything I did for the colonies. You have a knack for finding the right answer before you've actually realized it, don't you? So, Reginald Orlays committed the attacks. I'm glad to hear the truth has been uncovered, and that you and I are now free to resume working together. If that interests you, of course. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. Make yourself comfortable, and we can discuss. You find Orlays, deal with him, and you bring me the evidence. I'll give you the location of the research team. You find Orlays, you kill him, and you bring me the evidence. I'll give you the location of the research team. You, me, and my clone daughter, Hadrian. That's not information she shared with you, I presume. And I would expect you'd want to check in with the Major and Dr. Walker before paying it a visit. He'll likely have security protocols you'll need their help to overcome, though I would ask you, do not make the mistake of confusing me for a simple cutthroat. You're saving the galaxy, Captain. What tool wouldn't you use to protect it, and sealing away knowledge of the plant's potential? Which city would you prefer I'd sacrificed? Sidonia? Gagarin? New Atlantis? Very astute. That's my daughter. My progeny. You've been working alongside. There's a slate waiting for you in the transfer system. You've been working with my progeny, Hadrian, to find a way to stop more terramorph attacks. I wish to help. I haven't been to Londinian in many years. Why? Is there some way I could be of assistance? Were you able to recover what you were looking for? The attacks were a correction. So, what exactly are you doing here? Plenty still to be done in defeating the terramorphs, no? Well, thanks to our combined efforts, the Sanon name has more clout with the cabinet than it has in years. I hope to build on that. I hope I'm not the first to inform you that being a member of the Vanguard makes you the authorities. How may I be of service? Easy to say now. Did you need something, Captain? Welcome back, Captain. Do you have some news for me regarding Dr. Olays? You can collect Kaiser on Nira. Perhaps I can convince you to keep this among us. Maybe I still dream of a life outside these walls someday. A new face would be needed, of course, but it wasn't an impossibility. I have a long list of names civilized society would be better without. I just need someone to help me remove them from the picture. I'd hope it'd be obvious. My only goal has been protecting the colonies. I can ensure the remaining team members find their way to the Red Devil's headquarters. Except for one. Olays was the man whose death you brought about around the moon of Etheria, the pilot of the Warlock. How if the UC should ever come for him? It'd be better to die before ending up like me. Use whatever means you have to accomplish the mission. Nothing is off the table. Precisely. It was the only choice one could make when confronted with something so dangerous. I'd say it'd be a waste of your and Hadrian's time to have to track down the research team on your own. That is a pity, Captain. But I am in no position to negotiate. Though we needn't be enemies, you and I dedicated my life to the United Colonies. Every effort of my being to their protection. I even gave them my heirs. The cabinet at the time, long gone now, wished to keep me on as an advisor, and considering the other option, I was in no place to refuse. So upon my return from Londinian, we proceeded with our killing blow. Initially, we had great success against the mess the Freestar Collective called a navy. I was an admiral during the Colony War. One of its great villains, if you believe the slates. Executed for my crimes. It wasn't easy. But the beauty of being loathed is that people will do whatever they can not to deal with you. There are many threats to the colonies the cabinet fails to perceive. Welcome, Captain. Please, come down and approach the intercom. You and I should chat. Impossible, though. If the cabinet learns I'm the one responsible for the attacks. Not quite. Well, who better to find them? His name is Kaiser. You could find him on the Freestar world of Nira. A nightmare of a place. So you should arm yourself appropriately. Bring me evidence that the job's done, and I'll tell you what I know. In the last days of the war, the UC was on the precipice of executing a final great assault on the Freestar Collective home system of Cheyenne. Moments. So full of potential. I'm not proud of having squandered that for her. A part of the puzzle, certainly. But not the whole story. You won't be going after anyone that UC might miss. So you needn't fear in that regard. But then the Freestar citizenry decided to get involved. Dozens of civilian ships jumping in to shield their military counterparts. I can't undo what you've learned. Not without killing you. But what a waste that would be. No. Better for you to come work with me. Ah, my favorite visitor. To what do I owe the pleasure, though I would expect some resistance when trying to approach the target? Deal with any you encounter as you see fit. You would help me, like you did with Orlays, track them down, and keep them from doing harm to the United Colonies. Bring me something authentic. I need to know the doctor has been dealt with. Hadrian too. Heroes both. How may I be of assistance, Captain? Please, Captain. What I did for the good of the colonies. But in that moment, I wasn't about to add another dangerous variable to an already catastrophic war. What lost the UC the war was cowardice. I've been hearing a lot about you, Captain, and this plan of yours to prevent more terramorph attacks. You're going to need all the help you can get. Well, are you going to share this grand revelation you've uncovered? What would cause you to make such a ludicrous claim? You know, you're far more clever than I expected. The attack stopped with you and the Major, Captain. Now, to what do I owe the pleasure? Another visit. What can I do for you? After some long years earning the trust of this current regime, the UC has been permitting me to work alongside one of their recovery teams. So instead, they sacrificed far more lives in a protracted war, rather than doing the right thing from the start and demolishing the Freestar capital when they have the chance. An effort you and my progeny Hadrian have already made impressive progress on, and I'd like to help. They were raised by adoptive families made up of scholars and tacticians, trained at the United Colonies' greatest scientific and military academies. So I elected to trade my freedom for my continued existence. But such is the life of a soldier. You can find Kaiser on the Freestar world of Nira, though I'm sure the Major and Dr. Walker would be thrilled to hear the news of your discovery first. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist, and so I used their blind eye to my advantage. Though, in a sense, you've also been working with me. Well, I look forward to it, Captain. Not a bad thought. But no. So I ordered the bombing of the Londinian spaceport, fixing two problems at once. Halting the spread of the city's terramorph outbreak. So, did you find what you were looking for on Londinian then? It seemed a simple choice, and I think I have a part to play in helping you accomplish what you've set out to do. Surely you found something. You may have to deal with some mercenaries or other general banditry, but no one's gonna shed a tear if a merchant of death or a chem peddler and their henchmen meet an early end. So be it. I will not beg. You can go. I'm not surprised. The man fled every consequence he ever faced. I'm simply looking for you to acknowledge the truth. But the universe cut all that short. Now, though, it's placed even more crucial work in front of the two of you. Good news, then. In that moment, I wasn't about to add another dangerous variable to an already catastrophic war. You and I, continuing to protect the colonies from unseen threats. Far too clever indeed. When I discovered the plant, I did consider handing over what I'd found. What other Vanguard captain gets to become a hero of the colonies? You, myself, and my daughter are genuinely making the galaxy a better place with what we're doing. You can't expect me to just take your word Orlays is dead. I need proof. I couldn't stand by, knowing that a risk to the colonies like that was out there. Continue whenever you like. Are you here to tell me you've reconsidered? We can do great works together. Easier for all if you simply blow up his ship and be done with it. You can certainly try, but the man's been out there 20 years. He's likely gone feral by now. In that moment, I wasn't about to add another dangerous variable to an already catastrophic war. One task. That's all I require. Come back to gloat? A fear which I fed with stories of my own brutal treatment. They'll need their old research team. Keeping our little group tight-knit was critical to minimize risk of exposure. So he didn't come quietly then, as I suspected. I presume you have evidence of this. You would be tracking down and eliminating them while they're still small, prevent these persons of interest from becoming true concerns. I was told the process was decidedly complex. You're being honored only because I arranged the situations where it could happen. Be grateful. Biding your time, then? I hope you'll come to the right decision upstairs. I look forward to hearing about your discovery of Orlaze's malfeasance. See that they never become more than a nuisance. You have my undivided attention. As it happens, I know how to find them. I'll tell you, but in exchange, I need something taken care of. A powerful resource. If you can recover him, I weighed the options and made the call. How could you? I thought if my death was what it took to heal the wounds of the colony war, well, what was one life in the face of many? Go. Tell them that won't be your fate, Colonel. What luck he was stopped dead before he could hurt anyone else. His decades on the run brought to an end by you. Just think about the opportunity I've provided here. There are more on the horizon. If you do the right thing. I do still have a long list of threats to the UC that need addressing. You simply say the word and our good works can resume. Exactly the type of person who could help me with my works. But only if my name is left out of the conversations you're about to have. It was the only option that made sense at the time. You want to hear the words then. Always nice having guests. Now, what can I do for you? Captain, your files indicate a track record of unlikely successes. It is my genuine hope that, perhaps, down the line, you might become a part of our team. Then by all means, let's continue. Let's get to it then. Better to proceed with the plan. Tell the cabinet the partial truth, that Orlaze was solely responsible, but many of them I knew personally, and I've always had a mind for details. Where someone was born, next of kin. I look forward to news of your success. The attacks were a correction. The Major and Dr. Walker have their data, but to stop such a grand threat will require more than just the three of you. But you, of course, are welcome to try, though he has evaded us for this long. I don't expect capturing him will be easy. One detail unaccounted for. And look what happens. Which is why I hoped we could speak. Do you know who I am? Excellent. I have just the person in mind. I'd say it'd be a waste of your and the Major's time to have to track down the research team on your own. The Major was born to become a great leader, carry on the legacy I established, and was given all the finest training to support it. And she excelled. Once we'd cracked synthesizing the Lazarus plant's pollen, research that took years in and of itself, the attacks were exceedingly simple. When I heard you and Hadrian were headed for Londinian of all places, I presumed you must be onto something big. Hardly, but I finally found him. I want you to track him down. I want you to kill him. And when you're done, I want you to bring me the evidence. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm sure you've got plenty to do in dealing with the Terramorphs. So, if you didn't have anything else to discuss, helping them gather intelligence on, locate, and organize scenarios to lure in some of the criminals that evaded justice after the colony war. If you don't believe me, speak to the deputy. She'll confirm Orlaze is a man worth removing from this world. Why would you? You've done nothing wrong. In fact, when you head upstairs, I expect you'll find a cabinet prepared to shower you with praise. I won't soon forget such mercy. We are, after all, so much more than our legacies, genetic or otherwise. My access to the outside world may be limited, but as you've seen, I have my ways. Colonel, the troops that closed off the sewers after my evaluation, they're all in this facility. Harvesting the pollen directly is impossible. Too fragile to leave Londinian's atmosphere. Dealing with the Terramorphs, the leeches, the Lazarus plant. It's critical work. I've been privy to my fair share of sensitive information over the years, and look at the results. I know for a fact the cabinet's planning to honor both you and Hadrian once this is all done. Hardly. My only goal has been the protection of the colonies. So, what do you say? Leave my name out of this? Orlays will be a perfect patsy for it. And there's still plenty of good works you and I can do together. Why would we be punished for doing what was necessary to protect the colonies? Thus why the Terramorphs need to be dealt with. A military Model A. Yes, I'll tell you where they are. But in exchange, I need something dealt with. Then Lazarus pollen was pumped out of the ship during liftoff from the planet's surface. I believe that slate should be sufficient to guide you to the next problem to be dealt with. It wasn't solely for the benefit of the Sanon name that I organized the attacks. Our work will protect many lives, though now, I'm not so sure. There's already something waiting for you in the transfer system, and this is now how I serve. By protecting the colonies from threats old and new. Which is why I want to help you. As far as possible legal repercussions, I'll only be sending you to targets once they're away from the general populace. Why, that's the very problem. Precisely. Isn't this interesting? You know, you've proven far more clever than I had anticipated. If you were to inform the cabinet of what you learn now, all that would be for naught. Would the cabinet even trust Hadrian after that? I highly doubt it. Excellent. Please, deposit it in the transfer system. I destroyed my own copies once the attacks proved successful. And I knew better than to trust Orlays with all the components of our research at once. We were in the middle of an all-out war, Captain. Committing ships to save the city would have left another undefended. I was wondering when I might be seeing you again. What can I do for you? The city and its citizens were lost, but countless others likely saved. He would have eventually suggested Londinian as a possible destination for further research. Couched in data he would have believed he synthesized. It's easy to judge now, but that's ancient history now. You have much more pressing matters at hand, with which I can help. They picked our ships apart. The UC surrendered not long after, and thus rang the death knell for the great UC. So then, let's begin. No, I suppose not. The man was the perfect partner. Brilliant, amoral, terrified of capture. Oh, very much to the contrary. I faced my execution. The other was ordering the bombing of the Londinian spaceport to halt the spread of the Terramorph outbreak there. That one you'll need to collect yourself. They both have critical roles to play in the task at hand, but it's obvious they trust you. You'll need to convince them both it was Orlays. Colonel, the troops that sealed the sewers after my evaluation, they're all accounted for. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm not expecting he'll come quietly. Then it was just a matter of getting Hadrian in the right place to discover the whole thing. To rally the colonies to a defense. A lie, of course. The man had been my associate until I had you eliminate him. But that's something they need to know. After all, I do still have a long list of threats to the UC. This needn't be the end of our good works together. Of course. Quite the dangerous accusation you're leveling. What do you say we keep this between us? After all, given the cabinet's current state of anxiety, they might misinterpret such a discovery to mean I could have been involved with the attacks. That should contain all your target's details.